Good day, and welcome to the next CCS Candy webinar in our series of webinars. My name is Gavin Weir, and I am part of a team here at CCS Mining and Industrial. It is my pleasure to present today's webinar, where we'll be discussing Candy's next month's quantity tool. I'll aim to keep the webinar relatively short, focusing on all the key points regarding this topic. Due to the large number of people logged on, we will not be able to answer any questions during the presentation. However, please submit your questions during the webinar via the provided chat function on the screen. Afterwards, we will collate these questions and send the answers to everybody that registered for the webinar. Please note that the webinar will be recorded and you will receive a link to download the recording. Should you not be able to attend the webinar at the scheduled time, please still register, as you will automatically receive a copy of the recording. So what is next month's quantity? That is the forecasted quantity to be completed for the following month or period. We can either manually enter these quantities or use an existing forecast within Candy to update these quantities. It is an independent quantity, thus it won't affect any other quantities within Candy. Now today, we will look at the following: how to apply next month's quantity manually. We will also look at how to use next month's quantity or how to apply next month's quantity automatically by using our bill with quantity forecast document. And once we've applied it manually and also used the automatic feature, we will then go and have a look at the type of information we'll get from this next month quantity tool. We will analyze the information we'll get and then we'll finish off the webinar. So let's have a look at the next month quantity first. So for the manual quantity input, we need the following. The project must be an execution phase. Guys, remember that the next month quantity is a post-tender feature, meaning that the project should be an execution phase. We should have set up the valuation already. We then only add the appropriate columns we need, and we go and type in the manual quantity forecast quantities. It's real straightforward. We're going to set it up now using our Candy tool. So let's go have a look. And in Candy, we've created a couple of jobs. Just duplicate my job. And I'll open up my job for this example. Now this is a straightforward Candy job. We've done all the post-tender checks that we need. We copy our selling rates from gross, we copy the final quantities from our bill quantities, and we also ensure that all codes were allocated appropriately. I open up my standard valuation entry document, and as you can see, we've typed in some actual quantities for the period. Okay, now let's assume our forecast for the next month. We want to complete the earthworks section. We also want to start off with our concrete section, which is this section here. That is our concrete section. So for us to go and add in our next month quantity column, it's real straightforward. We just add, remove the columns, and we go and type in the quantities required or planned for the following month. I've already customized the document with those appropriate columns. So let's open it up. And you would see a next month's quantity column tool in this layout. As mentioned, the plan is to finish all the earthworks items as well as some of the concrete works. So I'll go and type in the planned quantities next to each of these items. And as we go along, we just type in these quantities that we are planning to do for next month. And there we go. You would see the next month quantity column, which we've populated with our planned quantities for next month. Now that is how easy it is to set up the manual input for next month quantity. To recap, we said the project must be in execution phase, the valuation must be set up, and I've already typed in some actual quantities. We then go and add in the appropriate columns, and we manually type in these quantities for the next period. We will start analyzing the results of the documents from using next month quantity once we've discussed the second method as well. Now the second, more advanced method uses Candy's quantity forecast document to update next month's quantity. And for that, we have a couple of requirements. And these requirements are the following. We need a linked bill and a program. Now we have multiple ways of linking, which will be discussed in a later webinar. Now by setting up the link, we now have quantities, resources, and money over time. Once we've set up the linked estimate to the schedule, we now need to go and store our baseline quantity forecast. And the baseline quantity forecast is the first step to run earned value in Candy. We do this to determine the monthly quantities as per the original scheduled time and original bill of quantities. This is our benchmark for earned value. If any changes have occurred, it is possible to rebase the forecast. Now once we've set up our baseline quantity forecast, the next step would be to progress both the valuation and the schedule. Now the actual quantities from the valuation, actual start, finish dates, and remaining durations on the program must be updated. We need to remember that your valuation date and program time now must be identical for this to work. Once we've progressed both the valuation and our program, the next step would be to synchronize our progressed quantities. In Candy, we have a document where we would compare the actual quantities from the valuation versus the progress quantities from the program. The goal of this document is to determine which of the planning or valuation quantities we want to use as the agreed progress quantities. Once the synchronization is done, we then need to redo the bill with quantity forecast based on our latest update. Now, why would we want to do that? We change actual quantities, actual start dates, remaining durations, and progress quantities. Once we change it, our forecast will change as well. Now, after these quantities have been synchronized, we redo the forecast to allow for these changes. The new forecast will determine the at completion costs and allowables. It won't affect our baseline. All these steps we also cover during our Earned Value webinar. And for this specific example, the last thing we need to do once we've redid the bill of quantity forecast, we then just need to copy our quantity forecast for the next month into our next month quantity column. Let's go have a look in Candy. In Candy, we're first going to have a look at our stored baseline. Now, as we mentioned, we have linked the estimate to the schedule or vice versa. We then forecast the estimated quantities across the activity durations as per the program. Our baseline will be set from this document. So this document, if I open it up, is under my Link and Forecast tab. And it's document 1.1 Bill with Quantity Forecast. There we go. As you can see on the left hand side, top of my document, it says that I've updated this from a summary program. So we are viewing the latest information. If we look at specific line items, item 1A, we see that we need to clear site and strip topsoil. We need to do a total of 125,000 square meters. And for November 2016, we need to do 38,000 square meters, for December 45, and for January 40,000. All these quantities are based on our estimate and our program. Excellent. So once we're happy with this, we can now set this as a baseline and our benchmark for this project. And to do that, we click on Main and we go and select our set allowable base. In this case, it says redo allowable base, meaning we've already set up the baseline for this project. As I mentioned earlier on, we can go and redo this baseline if we had some changes in quantities, durations, rates, etc. Now that takes care of our baseline forecast, our benchmark essentially. The next thing we need to do is we need to go and progress both valuation and the schedule. And the first thing is we're going to have a look at our valuation for our current project. Then we're going to check the valuation date, make sure it's similar to our program progress date or time now. Then we run the comparison. So under my valuations tab, I open up the standard valuation document. There we go. And you guys would see we've typed in some actual quantities to date. And we also note the valuation date, which is the 30th of November on this project. Under planning, we're now going to access our progress bar chart, which will show us the progress we've done for our schedule. And that is document 5.1 under my planning document manager. Under the progress, we type in our actual start dates, our actual finish dates, as well as our remaining duration. Now, the remaining duration column is an important column when we look at doing the forecast. We need to remember that the remaining duration will depict when we finish the activity. And that will also then depict when we will complete the total allocated quantity for that activity. So think about it. If you're going to extend the remaining duration past the original duration of that activity, your forecast will move out as well. So your remaining quantities will be spread across a longer duration for this project. That's a change we've made, so we still need to go and redo the forecast to update for these changes. Once we've progressed our valuation and we've put in some actual start and finish and remaining durations for our schedule, the next step would be, as mentioned, to go and synchronize our two quantities. In Candy, we've got a specific document which will be under our Link and Forecast tab. Document 6.3 under our forecasts. And let's have a look at this document. Now this document will show us the following. We'll have the final quantity, which we've copied from our bill quantities, or which we've probably remeasured by this time. The actual quantity will be from the valuation quantity itself. So we've typed in the actual quantities in our valuation document, and we will then populate it into this actual quantity column. Our program to date quantity, that is the quantity derived from our progress on the schedule. Remember, we've linked quantities over time when we link the estimate to the schedule. And once we type in our actual start dates and remaining duration, Candy will then calculate a program to date quantity for us. The over and under allocated to date, that is the difference between our actual quantity from the valuation and our program to date quantity. And that is the quantities we need to go and fix. By default, Candy would use the program to date quantity as your progress quantity. We have a choice. We can either use the actual quantity from the valuation or the program to date quantity from our program. In this instance, we want to use the actual quantity from the valuation and force the program to update with the same quantities. Under Tools, we've got an option that reads Spread the valuation remaining quantities over activities. Essentially, we're saying take my valuation, deduct that from my final quantity, and then the remaining spread across the remaining duration of the activities. We say yes, we want to spread. And we get a note that states Candy valuation and program allocation has been synchronized. And that's what we want to do. We need to synchronize these quantities. Also note that the allocation to date over and under column is now empty, and our to date allocated quantities are similar to the actual quantities from the valuation. So to recap what we've done, we made sure we linked an estimate to the schedule. We then stored our baseline quantity forecast. We then made sure we progressed both our valuation and schedule. And guys, bear in mind the important step or the important requirement there is to make sure that both the valuation and the schedule time now dates are exactly the same. We first synchronized the progress quantities, and once we've done that, we now need to make sure that our forecast is giving us the latest information. That's the next step. So that is also under our Lincoln Forecast tab, under my financial forecast, bill with quantity forecast. There we go. Immediately on this forecast, we notice the red text in the top left-hand corner, which states that we've made a quantity change, and the red will tell me I'm not viewing the latest information, I'm not viewing the latest forecast. The actual quantity column now depicts our update, our valuation quantities. And if we go and compare that against the 1st of November 2016 quantities, we now see that we've done less than what we originally planned. The remaining quantity difference will tell us, listen here, for item 1A, clear site and strip topsoil, for that item there, we are actually 10,700 squares behind our plan. We now need to forecast those 10,700 squares across the remaining duration of the project. So we still need to do that. To update our forecast, we click on Tools and we select Import Forecast from a program. Let's do that. We select the program we want to use and we update the forecast. Notice what happens. The remaining quantity difference column, we've emptied that and we spread the remaining quantity across the remaining duration of these activities. We now see that for our next months, in December, we need to do 44,000 square meters. That is our target. That is our plan for the following month. And those quantities I now want to bring into my next month quantity column. So to do that, we right click in my next month quantity column heading and we select Update from Forecast. Say yes. There we go. And you would see that we've now mirrored what we see in December 2016 in our next month's quantity column. And that is the second method. To show you guys, it will pull through to our valuation next month quantity column. Let's go have a look at that. Let's open our valuation entry document. And there we see our next month quantity column with our planned quantities based on our quantity forecast. Now to recap on the auto forecast using our next month quantity or our bill with quantity forecast tool, let's have a look at our PowerPoint. We mentioned that we first need a linked estimate and schedule, which we've done and we checked it. We then stored the baseline quantity forecast. We made sure we progress both the valuation and the schedule. Important, remember the time now and update date must be exactly the same. We synchronize those two quantities using our document 6.3 under link and forecast. We redo our quantity forecast as we've made changes to the remaining durations, and we then copy next month's quantity from the forecast. Once we've determined the forecasting quantities, we can now start extracting and analyzing the data needed to achieve these planned quantities. So some of the information we can get from using our next month quantity is the budget or allowable for the following month. We can also go view our resource budget or allowable for the following month. We can get a report which will show us the resource usage for next month, which is very helpful to the procurement guys. We can go and view a task and a cost code next month allowable, or maybe just a task code or just a cost code next month allowable. And we can also go and set up the expected man hours for next month to achieve these planned targets. So the first one we're going to have a look at is our budget or allowable for next month. That's a real easy one. What we need to do is we take our standard valuation document where we've added in our next month quantity column, and we're going to go and add in our next month net amount column to that layout. So we open up our valuation entry document. Here we see our next month quantity column already in the view. We then use our shortcut to customize, which is Control F1 to view our columns. And I normally use the find function at the bottom of my column layout window to go look for the next month quantity columns. So the find to the bottom of the window, we type in next and we click on find. So it will jump to the first occurrence of the word next. In this case, we have already used next month quantity. We've already added that column. So let's click on find next again. And there's the column we want, next month net amount. I need to add that to my selected columns. Here we go. Click OK. And immediately we'll see next to my next month quantity, the next month net amount for those bill items. Just calculate. And now we have the planned budget based on our next month quantities, our next month allowable. So for us to view the next month resource usage, we need to go and customize a document, a resource document, to show us the appropriate columns. I've already customized the document which we can use. That would be under my resource documents. Remember, we're still working in valuations. I'll show you guys the columns that we've added. And we've added column number 6.8, and 8.8, which is the next period quantity net usage, as well as the next period quantity net usage amount. So let's use the find function again just to determine if there's any other columns we can add to this layout, which will show us information based on next month's quantity. Use find. 6.8 we've already added to our layout. Six point 11 is next period quantity cost usage. So you guys are familiar with cost rates. That will give us the cost rates usage. Next period quantity net waste. So we can also go and add a column for the next period waste allowable, as well as the cost waste, so the waste based on our cost rates. And for all three of those columns, we can go and view the usage amounts as well. So the waste amount, the cost amount, and the cost waste amount, all based on next period quantities. There we go. So let's open up the document and I calculate to refresh. Now the usage column will give us an accurate indication of how many hours, tons, meters, and number of resources we need for the next period. Stores can use this information to determine whether we have enough stock on site. Procurement can also use this information to order materials required for the following month. If we look at certain resources like diesel, now diesel, we need 2,220 liters for next month. And it might be that we only have capacity on site to stock 1,000 liters maximum. So we need to now make a plan to ensure that we have enough diesel on site. We can either then decide to bring in an extra Bowser for the month or get another delivery of diesel in the middle of the month, depending on when you're going to use the 2,200 liters of diesel. At least we get a heads up before this happens and we sit on site and we do not have any more diesel on site. Now that takes care of our resource usage. The next one I want to show you guys is our next month task code and cost code allowable. So that we'll find under our cost and allowables tab, and depending on the level of cost control, we can supply the estimated spend for next month based on either task codes, cost codes, or task and cost codes. Let's open up a normal cost and allowables document. And as you would know, the standard cost and allowables document will show us the to date, remaining, and at completion information of the project. We can now go and add in the planned next month info to this current document. A best practice would be to make a duplicate of this document and rename it to read cost and allowables next month quantity and add in the appropriate columns. I've already done that, so let's open up the appropriate document, which I've called cost and allowables by period with next month quantity. And there we go, there's the column which we've added to show next period allowable. And as mentioned, we can either show it as a just a task code allowable, or a task and cost code allowable, or just a cost code allowable. So to show just task codes, easiest way is to roll up our document and open it up to one level lower, and we now see allowables per task code for the next period. If we run the project based solely on cost codes, we can also customize this document to view only the cost codes for my next month quantity. Again, I'll show you guys how to customize. That is shortcut Control F1 on your keyboard. And we need to remove our task code column from this layout. There we go. Once we remove the task code column, we now have only the cost codes with their next month or next period allowable per cost code. Excellent. The last one we're going to have a look at is our expected man hours for the month. We've already spoken about next month resource usages, which will indicate how many hours per labor resource we need. If we use production codes, we can combine these hours into a man-hour total. We can then use the man-hour column to depict how many hours we require per task for the next month. Now to set that up, still under cost and allowables, we've got a document which we call quantities and man hours. That is document number 1.7. I customized my 1.7 by adding in my next month allowable as well, or my next month quantity, as well as my next month man hours. Let's open up 1.7. This is not a default document, so you would need to go and add it under new documents. And let's have a look at our site clearance task or activity. And we've got two sections on this document. First section will be based on quantities, and the second section will be based on our man hours. Now, under our allowable quantities section, we now see that for the next period, the plan is to do 71,000 square meters of site clearance. To date, we've done 44,000. We still need to do another 155,000. And the final currently sitting at 200,000 square meters. Under our man hours, we can also determine what we need to achieve the 71,000 square meters. And in this example, we see that we need a total of 2,169 man hours to achieve our planned 71,000 square meters for this next period. And this is important information because we need to determine whether we have enough people or labor on site to achieve these tasks. That is very important. So let's recap on all the different views. Remember that we also can print the same views as reports. We also have extra reports based on our next period quantities. So for our data analysis, once we've either manually entered our next month quantities or used our bill with quantity forecast to update them for us, we can go and extract the following information. We can either view the budget or allowable for the next month, which we just added a column to our existing valuation document. We can go and view our resource, budget allowable for next month. There we added in some extra columns to our resource list, which will depict our next month usages. Remember, we can view it for waste as well and cost. We can view the resource usage for next month. We can also go and view the task and cost code depending on your level of control for the next month allowable. And we also set up an expected man hours document for the next period. So this concludes Candy's next month quantity webinar. We had a look at manually entering next month quantities using our bulk with quantity forecast to update our planned next month quantities. And then we also analyzed the information available. I hope this session has been informative and that you have added even more value to your daily use of Candy. Thank you to all the attendees, and also a big thank you to you, all our users, for allowing Candy to make a difference on not just your projects, but within your organizations as well. Please remember to email your local CCS office if you want to know more about Candy's next month quantity or have any other queries. And remember, if you cannot attend the webinar, please still register and you will receive a recording of the session which you can watch on your own time. So until the next webinar, goodbye.